You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. And now, the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today, in studio, we have, I dub the Duke of Durham cocktails from Bar Virgile, and at some point, the Annex, one Daniel Sartain. Welcome,
Thanks, boys.
sir.
Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man, welcome. Thank you for coming all the way from Durham. Took the high roads, the highways over here to come to downtown Raleigh. It's nice to be in person. This is our first recording of the year.
That's right.
Matthew, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, bud.
Daniel, Happy New Year.
Same to you. Happy New Year.
Also, happy birthday, Matthew Weiss.
Thank you very much.
Oh.
Thank you.
He's
Yeah,
a New
man.
Year's baby. And just to start it off right here, I've got a gift for Matt.
What?
Oh, you can hear the gift right here. Go ahead.
This is
open it up.
fancy wrapping paper.
Yes, it's wrapped in a paper bag. You can see who it's from. It's
Stanberry.
from one of our favorite restaurants.
Stanberry swag t-shirts.
Look at that.
I love it.
Yeah. We Matt and I always talk about
Nice.
Stanberry. We love those guys. If listeners are always like, "Yeah, if you love them so much, why haven't they been on the show?" That's on
That's
you,
a great
Stanberry.
question, yeah.
No, I talked with Joe Jeffers at times, and we've discussed it.
Nice.
He's like, "Let's do it when we got something to talk about." And I said, "You've always got something to talk about." I think he wanted to wait till like open, restaurants are open, do whatever. But even in this time, they took a week off to close. They even said they had some COVID stuff they were worried about, but they're taking the precautions to just say, let's be closed for a week anyways, give our staff a time off after the holidays, which was perfect. But before they did that, I saw all their new swag that they had released. I love the imagery on there, right? That's like image, I forget, it's the cover of a book or something. Somebody's got to tell me. I'm not smart enough to know it, but they changed what he's flying away from, and instead
That's
he's flying away from the COVID virus.
That's the Little Prince.
For the Little Prince. There we go. That's what I meant to say. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, the French last name helps.
Yeah. And bartenders seem to know everything.
Yeah.
And even if it's not, he like convincingly says it, so you believe it.
Dude, let's support these guys. List Stanberry for their swag and like the nice canvas brand. And
Yeah.
oh, you're wearing
And-
it too?
No, I got my own
color.
version of it. I got the Star Wars
Nice.
Stanberry logo.
Oh, wow.
So we love those guys. If you haven't gone to Stanberry, go out there. They're not sponsors of the podcast. We just think they're fucking great.
I need some T-shirts.
Seriously.
I know.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, happy birthday, man. And so we're here. We're talking with Daniel about bars. This has been a tumultuous year. Well, now we're in 2021, so 2020 was definitely tumultuous for everybody. I don't know if anyone was more affected than bar owners. That might have been one of the more significant ones, aside, of course, from healthcare professionals and all. Let's not be too
Absolutely.
grand sweeping in those comments. But in the restaurant industry, the bar industry probably got smacked down harder than most. Before we get deep into that, let's at least discuss, Bar Virgile, Daniel, who you are, what the place is for those that haven't been to that beautiful little nook there in downtown Durham. So maybe we start there. Let us know, like, how long has Bar Virgile been open? Give us the stats on.
Sure. Well, first of all, Little Nook is right. I mean, we're 973 square feet. And that includes the kitchen and the dish pit and all of that. So pretty tiny place that opened December 2014. Originally, it was a partnership between myself and Scott Howell and his wife. We ran that together for, just about 4.5 years together before we started a process to which I became 100% and sole proprietor. But the vision to begin was obviously pre-prohibition style cocktails, kind of fun riffs on old classics and stuff like that. Our first menu, even, we put up a big sticker on the board. When you walk in, you're going to see 8 cocktails, and it's standard things. It's martinis, it's the Martinez, Ramos Gin Fizz, even to the chagrin of my bartenders. That was up there. They're like, man, we can't do this. You got to take this down. I was like, that's an expensive sticker. We're not taking it anywhere. You guys need to get fast, and then everything will work out just fine. So
For those that have never made a Ramos Gin Fizz, it's time consuming.
It can be. can be. There's a lot of press out now about how to do it quickly using a large cube and getting that whip going really, really quick. But we figured we figured out pretty early, adding a bit more heavy cream than the typical recipe calls for, that you're going to get that head and that fizz a lot faster. So we broke it down in the early going to about a 2.5 minute, 3 minute cocktail.
That's
versus
really fast for Ramos.
Yeah, so you're not doing a dry shake at top.
No, we are. It's both wet shake, dry shake, all that good stuff. But when you add a little bit more cream, it's just going to be a little bit of a creamier drink than terribly fizzy, but it's delicious, and it gives you that same beautiful head that comes out of the top of the Collins glass, all the theatrics, all that good stuff. But we had to do it fast because, again, that sticker wasn't coming down.
Well, that's like the thing. I think I've only had Ramos Fizz like once or twice, mainly because it was like me and a few bartenders were doing it just for the sake of trying to make one.
Sure.
But like I would never order one because I am empathetic to bartenders' needs. I'm like, yeah, I'd like one, but I feel bad ordering one. So now that I know that you guys do it so easily, guess what?
Come on, bring
bartenders at Bar Virgile, I'm going to break your wrists over here.
Yeah, earmuffs for the guys that work for me, but come on in.
Come on in, get a Ramos Fizz.
First time I had one, I was at a place called the Dawson in Chicago, and I just asked the gal that was behind the bar. I was with my sister. I was like, 2 gin-based cocktails, long, citrusy, blah, blah, blah. And she busted out 2 Ramoses side by side. And she's this beautiful gal just crushing these 2 Ramoses. And I was just like, wow, what is that? Handed them to me. And I was like, in all its gloriousness. I was just like, this is where it's at.
The first time somebody ordered one at Cafe Del Rey where Max was actually my manager and I was the bartender. And I had to figure out how to make it pretty damn quick. Thankfully, we had that book behind the bar. But I figured it out. And it came out pretty good, actually.
Yeah,
I had to get the egg whites from the kitchen or break the egg in it.
It came out good?
It came out really good. I thought I was like, man. Oh, that's actually a really good drink.
I'm
learned
getting
something
confused
that day.
with that and the other fizz, the orange water, right? Is orange water in the Ramos
Yeah,
Fizz?
orange blossom water, a couple
Orange
drops.
blossom. Yeah, that's right. And we would have that. We had that bottle of it
Only because
way in the back of the
Back there with the pearl onions, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think this is good. Yeah. Well, actually, I could ask one question. What do you, in the heat of battle and like let's call it like 10 or 11 o'clock at night? How do you feel about people that order Bloody Marys?
Oh, well, we don't have Bloody Mary mix in our bar, just because there's a time and a place for it, and that's not it. So.
I'm saying this because if my wife's listening, she knows I'm talking about her.
Yeah.
I remember going to a really cool bar up in Santa Cruz, Northern California, and it was late at night. It was kind of almost a club. And she's like, yeah, I just want like savory. I don't want sweet. She goes, I'll take a Bloody Mary. And the bartender looked at her like, what? And me being so like, protective of my wife, even though I knew, I'm like, hey, you're a bartender, man. Just make the drink. And he's like, I'm like, really? But at the same time, I was like, yeah, it's kind of
you gotta
move to order Bloody Mary at 10 o'clock.
I don't know about that. I think people are allowed to like what they like and order whatever the fuck they want when they're
What
paying
say
for
you,
it.
public? Respond in some post. What do you think about Bloody Marys at nighttime?
Yeah,
I'm okay with it. I mean, it's hospitality, right?
in order for my team to not say no and to roll their eyes, it's better for them to say we just simply don't have that.
We don't have
So
it.
nip that in the bud before it even happens.
We don't have
right?
a tomato or tomato juice anywhere within 5 miles of here, actually.
Yeah, I just saw gazpacho go out from the kitchen.
Stick some of that in my drink.
Yeah, I'm taking notes here. No gazpacho. No.
Well, in speaking of hospitality, and we like to talk about coaching trees as it relates to the restaurant. So you come off a pretty famous in this area coaching tree, so to speak. So working with the Howells, you were at Nana's, and of course that comes off in some aspect of the Magnolia and Ben Barker tree.
I was at Magnolia Grill for 2.5 years.
Oh, and that's right. And you worked at Magnolia. So you are like rooted in the restaurant culture of Durham for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I always like the aha moments, the inspiration. So then you worked at Nana's, you were kind of running the place there, or at least running the bar, right?
Well, GM for all intents and purposes,
GM,
but Scott's not about titles, so you just do the work.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And then so how was it? And we talked to Scott. That episode's like 2.5 years ago at this point.
I was still in my basement at the house.
Yeah.
And
We're still like in our infancy.
Yeah. We were just learning English at that time.
You've come a long way.
Pretty much.
I do remember, sidebar, Matt did want to do an entire episode in Spanish. I remember him saying that. He's like, well, should we do one? And I'm like, who? With who? Like, with me? And he's like, yeah, you're Trujillo. I'm like, I don't speak Spanish. He's like, you speak Spanish better than I can, at least.
Yo quiero burrito. So what was the aha moment? What was like, you know what? I'm ready to do my own thing, and this is what I want to do, and how am I going to go about doing it?
Yeah, well, that goes back, man. I started washing dishes when I was 15 years old. I left home at an early age, and I needed to work. You know, got promoted to busboy, started waiting tables at the age of 18, couldn't wait to get behind a bar at the age of 21. Next thing I knew, I was managing, went to school, went to Cape Fear down in Wilmington, transferred to NC State. During that time, I was bartending at Sullivan's.
Okay.
And Sullivan's back in those times was a lot of fun. I mean, Glenwood was, there were 3 places on Glenwood. There was like, you know, the Rockford. There was, you know, the cigar bar Havana Lounge.
Yeah.
And then Hibernian had just opened up.
These places are all still existing, though.
Yeah, that's
kinda
right.
Nice to know. And, you know,
That's right.
shout out to Kevin Ruiz, who's the chef at Rockford now. He's worked alongside me at Y Hill and some other places. He opened up Lady Luck, and that was not lucky. And some other things happened there. But
Man, that thing had like a huge. It burst onto the scene, and then
well,
unfortunately,
there were
there
things
was-
that happened that transpired. That's
Right,
why Lady Luck's
unfortunately.
not around. But yeah, the Rockford, that's cool. I've heard that they're actually planning to do a lot more too. So stay tuned to hear more about the Rockford.
Yeah, good for them. But yeah, Sullivan's was a lot of fun. I mean, it was bustling. We were just cranking it out. I mean, there was speed, and professionalism, learning how to talk to people, learning a lot about single malt whiskeys and all of that, keeping your uniform tight. I mean, a high sense of professionalism. There was a guy that worked there, Bart Bombreast, that really just kind of, I told him, I was like, man, I think the restaurant business is where it's at for me. And he was like, dude, you're in school. You're a smart guy. Don't do it.
But also, just to give a framework of that, because going back to that time, I'm not to age you, but that's probably what, 12 some odd years ago, 12, 13 years ago?
No, that was almost 20 years ago.
Almost 20 years ago. So before the
I'll double
2008
down.
depression. And Sullivan's, for people outside of the Triangle or even outside of North Carolina, is like the more local arm of Del Frisco. So it's steakhouse. At that time, that was king. You were getting big bottles of wine,
Totally.
expensive whiskey.
Yeah.
People have money to spend. You know,
Yep.
it's after the Clinton era and stuff like that. And so that's a good time to be in the steakhouse and in the restaurant business.
It was so much fun. I mean, there was 2001, you know, right after 9/11, I think is when I started, December. But there was just this air of professionalism. I bartended with Brian and Alex Amra of Tobacco Road.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it was me and those 2 guys and a couple of others, and we just had a lot of fun. And that's really where I fell in love with it. A couple years after that, I moved on and worked at 5 Star. I was at 5 Star for probably 2.5 years. Everywhere I worked was 2.5 years. I was a military brat. We always moved, so 2 years, it was time's up for me.
5 Star moved recently too to
They
a new
did.
location
They
on
did.
West. Clark
Yeah.
Hippolito did all the artwork on the walls.
What's
It's
up,
really
Ippolito?
beautiful. Yeah, he's a good dude.
That's my boy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good place to check out too.
Yeah, so 5 Star was pretty legendary. I mean, like, you had to cut your teeth working at 5 Star, you know, like to be a good bartender in Raleigh. I mean, it was just kind of like the dream job. I mean, I'm not OG 5 Star, but I'm definitely old school 5 Star. It was like 04 to 06, something like that.
Yeah.
So right after that, that's when I went out to Durham and got lucky enough to get hired on by Ben and Karen Barker. And I mean, I think I just interviewed really well. And I've always had like a passion for food and a passion for wine. But I learned a lot about wine at Sullivan's. But I mean, it really took off working with Ben.
Speak to that perspective wise, like the Magnolia Grill, for those that don't know here, you know, it doesn't exist any longer, but it was considered to be one of the greatest restaurants in our area. What was your perspective of that? Like being at Sullivan's and going, I want to go here. Like, why? Why did you want to do that? What was your perspective of Magnolia Grill at the time?
Well, somewhere that was kind of out of Raleigh. I was living downtown Raleigh, and I was just kind of, you know, overseeing the same faces from time to time in a way. And I knew I wanted to work for a sort of higher level restaurant. And you're absolutely right. It was known as probably the strongest restaurant in the area.
Yeah.
And he was one of the pioneers of slow foods and all that sort of stuff. Southern Food Alliance. I mean, he's a big name when it comes to that. His Tree of Life in Durham, as you know, Scott being a part of that too. I mean, it's massive. There's just so many businesses that spawned after that. But to your question, you know, it just seemed like such an alluring thing, and interviewed well and started working tables in the bar area, which was this tiny little elevated area. Dining room was kind of down low, and the bar was up here. There were 7 tables and a barman. So I took care of that area. and just fell like deeply in love with his food, his description of food. There was lineup every day that was 15 to 20 minutes long. You were there, you had your tools, you were crisp and ready to go.
I love all that.
And he would, he'd be like, all right, we brought on this new Chablis, and he'd pour a taste for everyone, and he would sit there and give the descriptors and talk about the winemaker itself, but more importantly, the flavors and how it pertains to his menu and why it's on his menu. I'll never forget, and I said this in an interview with Durham magazine. They asked me to recount a story, and I had these like big fancy business guys that were there, all in like, just primo suits. There's about 6 of them, and they came to eat at the best restaurant in Durham, and we had like an Arajo Vineyards Cabernet on the list. It was about $450, something like that. Of course, that's what they order. I'm stoked. It's middle of summer, mind you, right? So
of course,
and so all the food is lemon and just bright flavors, right? And just kind of
doesn't
dainty.
match the
Not at
wine
all.
at all.
So I'm stoked. I go back to Ben. I was like, I sold the Arajo. They're probably going to get 2, and he would go pull the big ones. He looks at me and he's like, he goes, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, those dudes aren't leaving here thinking I don't know how to cook. That wine is unavailable to you, sir. And I knew what he meant. I was just like, guys, I went over to the table. I was like, the wine's unavailable. They're like, you're out of it? I said, no, we're not out of it. I was like, it's just not available.
Wow.
And then they kind of got it. They were like, so what do you recommend? And so I steered them to a Riesling from Polish Hill in Clare Valley, Australia.
Nice.
It's like $130 versus $450. And Ben goes, good. He's like, thanks for pulling your head out of your ass. Like, look what you can do when you use your brain. So come on.
It.
Ben would stand there and watch every plate go out and every plate go back in. It's like, why didn't she eat that? I'm like, well, she doesn't like fava beans. It's like, you need to go tell that lady to grow up. It just amazing. I mean, you never could.
But that reminds me of like, I read this somewhere where they talked about the difference between men and women when it comes to like pairing and like being a sommelier, and that like men would typically like, they're almost like label, pardon the term, but label whores, right? Like they're like, it doesn't matter that it was 100% humidity outside and 92 degrees. They want, the big Napa Cab or the big, just anything over the top.
Sure.
Whereas women don't give a shit about that. They're just like, let's do a rosé because it makes sense for the weather, or let's get a Chassagne or Montrachet. Like, let's do that because it makes sense. It can be classy, it can be high end, but it doesn't need to just be like so label focused and whatever, because in the end, like, these guys aren't buying it because they think it's delicious. They're buying it because they want to impress.
Yeah, they go to the bottom of the list. They see it's the most expensive thing, and so that's an easy win, right?
Yeah.
I think dudes are kind of like that, man. But if you ever see like a dude sitting out drinking rosé in the springtime, it's good for you, dude.
Yeah,
he's comfortable with his masculinity.
No, totally. I mean, we can talk about wine and Ben Barker stories all day long.
Yeah, totally.
Which that would not be bad. But I want to know, and this is for both of you as restaurateurs, because that's the one thing that bothers me. As you said, like every day you had 15 to 20 minutes where the restaurant got together and you talked about what was going on, whether there were specials, a new dish, a new farmer you were getting ingredients from, and you taste a wine, or maybe it be a cocktail. Like, less and less, even in the nice restaurants, the well-run establishments, we're not doing that. And it's like so frustrating to get your staff together. I'm like, I know there's a business aspect to that because you can't take people off the floor, you can't be closed, but that just adds so much to the people. And like, knowledge is power. So you're empowering your staff when you're telling them what's going on with the ingredients. And also, it's just like, it's embarrassing that so much of the staff is just clueless to the wine.
I think, well, for one, I mean, it sounds so alien to hear what these processes are, given just the whole 2020 shutdown of restaurants and like having
alien to hear having lineup.
Yeah, like having a lineup talking about fresh ingredients and what we're going to do tonight, and this is the bottle of wine.
Yeah, good point.
Like that just feels so weird. But what's great about it is because it sounds so alien and so weird, it's definitely going to come back because it's going to be unique, like very soon when we're able to get out there and do things. And I think, mark my words, 2021.
Writing them down.
Yeah, mark them. I believe that fine dining will hit the scene hard, like in a very positive way. It might not be until like the fall or so when people are starting to feel more comfortable about it. But I tell you that the thing that you're talking about, the farm to table, the daily, the fresh, the really great wine pairings, the high end cocktail programs, all that stuff, people are going to yearn for it. They are going to want the dinner and a show. And so I think, man, just thinking about my first restaurant I ever worked at was a Santa Barbara Grill, which sounds not cool, but it was actually a really nice, swanky restaurant in the Bay Area, San Jose. Every shift we were given, right when you clocked in, you had to pick up a little like a chit, little like piece of paper, and on it was the general manager would print 5 questions about our menu, and you had to grab it, go into a on your own. You couldn't discuss with other people and like steal answers or cheat. You just had to go, and you had to fill it all out and hand it in before pre-shift. If you didn't get, I think it was, you had to at least get 3 of the 5 correct. If you got less than 3 right, you couldn't be on the floor that night and you were sent home.
Freaking love that. That would never happen today. What say you as a business owner and somebody like, how does the staff at Bar Virgile get on board with new happenings and stuff like that?
To Max's point, I think that he's right. People are going to yearn for the technicalities, the precision. You don't know what you got until it's gone. And in 2020, people are driving up in their cars and grabbing to-go food, and there is no romance. There is no ceremony anymore. To your point, I think that unless you have a model where everyone shows up at the same time and everyone leaves at the same time, and you have your books in a row, you know what's coming at 5, 5:30, 6, so on, all the way to your last seating, it's really hard. If you have any sort of staggered entry for your front of the house team, if you have an opening bartender and a closing bartender, if you have an opening floor person and a closing floor person, it's really very hard to get everyone on the same page with new things, because you can't have a full-on lineup. You really can't. My place is closed one day a week. It's closed on Sundays. To ask everyone to come in on their day off to go through, some sort of processes wouldn't be fair to them.
Seems unfair, yeah.
So you have to use, what's out there. You got to use text messaging. You can use, certain scheduling software. You can send messages to people and that. But then you don't really know. You don't get the passion. You don't get to see the manager or the bartender who created this cocktail or the chef be passionate about what they did. So I think just not knowing.
It creates more of that like sole proprietorship, which is in a way good, but everybody owns their own section, right? Or like this bartender's on his own island because he's making his money or she's making her money, and there becomes a lack of cohesiveness, of like one team, one dream kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And sense of ownership in any restaurant, you hope for that. And you can only lead by example. You can be passionate about every detail, lead by example, and hope that other people kind of follow suit. Hope that they think that that the drawer has to be to the nickel, that all of the credit card seats were done and the batch was closed properly and the doors were locked properly. The only way to get that done is if somebody does have a sense of ownership. And that can start at a pre-shift, that goes through your shift. There's accountability. We talk about interpersonal accountability all the time. I don't have a general manager. I don't really believe in that construct for a small place that's owned and operated by me. I believe that if everyone holds each other accountable and is fair, then it's going to work just fine. So with that, people are always talking about what the right thing to do is, what the wrong thing to do is, and there's a culture of wanting to learn more and wanting to share information about wines, spirits, food, etc.
Yeah, it's weird. There's like a disconnect a little bit with like what you're saying, Daniel, about having like a scheduling software where you can communicate with all your team. I'm very familiar with that, and I was doing that a lot at Y Hill. We would send notes to each other and all. But it reminds me there's a parallel, and as a dad and having kids that are doing online schooling as opposed to being in person. My kids are in school in person, but like right now for the first week back from Christmas holiday, they have to do it online. They're not learning anything online, and the education level is like it's all about like the individual person, the actual kid that wants to know. And let's be frank, like if you're a second grader, you're like, how much drive do you have to like, I have a thirst for knowledge. And I think that still continues then in the workforce as adults, where it's like you could give all this information out via text message or an email, but it still takes the server, the bartender, whoever, to read it, ingest it, digest it. Whereas at least if you had an in-person line up a meeting, you can call on someone and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, Matt, tell me again what are the 5 grapes of Bordeaux?" Like I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear, and no kid left behind type of mentality when you do that, because it's real easy to think that you're efficient. Even managing the numbers at the end of the night, we're using new software companies and all, and they make it so easy that like you don't even have to really look at a cash report. Like everything's done.
Yeah.
You're like, boom, okay, done. So then you get disassociated from your own finances unless you yourself want to analyze it. But it's taking the fundamentals away because of technology, and it makes business easy, but I don't know if it's making business better.
Yeah, I could talk to you for a long time about that. I think that 2020 and the ramifications of it. I heard not too long ago a very big company said, we don't want anyone reporting to work again ever anymore. Everyone's going to work remotely. I think that if a lot of people followed suit in doing that, what happens to big cities? What happens to these big buildings? What happens to the people that drive the trains and the buses? What happens to shops? What happens to restaurants and bars? It all just sort of crumbles. So I think that's I don't think that's very wise sort of philosophy anyway, and I think it's somewhat dangerous. I think that there's something to be said about the romance and the ceremony of face-to-face exchange that will never go away. I think that there's also technology on the other side of this conversation. It's always, in the world of tech, it's always what's next, what's quick, what's fast, what's going on. But I like food and beverage, and I like restaurants and bars because you sit the hell down, you relax, you're face-to-face with somebody. I mean, for me, in a good quality place, the world stops. You go eat at La Bernardin, the world stops for a long period of time, and you are in heaven, and it's fantastic. That'll never change. That sort of stuff can't change. It's like technology too, like twist caps in wine, right? It's wonderful. It's beautiful. How much wine is lost to cork taint every year? 15%, something along those lines. But nobody's going to transfer to that, well, some people are, but not everyone's going to transfer to that because of the ceremony of taking the cork out of the bottle. There's something almost nearly religious about that. And the same thing's going to happen in my idea. People going to restaurants and bars, it's not the end. We have other things like curbside delivery. We've been able to kind of, pivot a little bit in order to grow business and to find another revenue stream. But people are going to want to come and sit down in front of a bartender or have a great waiter or sit in an open kitchen and watch food being prepared. That's just not going anywhere.
Yeah, and have somebody tell them the stories about the wine and about the food and stuff like that.
Absolutely. That means everything.
I love what you just said right there. I almost feel like that's got to be a hashtag for getting people back into restaurants. Hashtag sit the hell down.
Sit the hell down.
Sit the hell down in a restaurant and just enjoy.
And behave, please.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a lot about, on that note also, just to put a bow on that, maybe that would bring some cohesiveness and eliminate some of the divided country that we are if we could get back to restaurants and sit next to somebody who might have a different political view but actually have a conversation versus having a conversation via Facebook or whatever.
That's a big bow, but I'm down with that.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked a lot about business and how to run your business. So one of the things that really intrigued me about you was you famously started this business with Scott Howell and Aubrey, and it was successful enough to where you were operating for a while. But then maybe you got the 2.5-year itch, as you do, or whatever it was, and you started to figure out ways that your business could be more efficient. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you kind of created and pivoted there?
Sure. Primarily, one of the first things that I learned was that in that tiny little place, I can conceptualize a menu. I can cook food. I can't cook for 250 people. It's just not my skill set. I went after a couple more noteworthy names as far as chefs go in the early going because Scott, while the executive chef and conceptualizer of the food program and what have you in tandem with me and Aubrey, of course, we hired someone to come in and sort of execute that food. I did it for a couple of years and it didn't work out either time. Unfortunately, I think for any young chef out there, don't cook your way out of the kitchen. Make sure you stay in the kitchen. Nobody wants to spend $70,000 a year on an expediter, and while they're paying a lot of money towards talented line cooks. Okay, and I don't have any qualms saying it. Yeah. But I think what I found were some really talented line cooks that really deserved a chance, that really deserved the ability to develop relationships with the purveyors, food distributors, and all of that sort of stuff. So I said, this is a way that I could save a ton of money. So I did it. And with that, my cash flow obviously just accelerated. I learned to read my balance sheet, my P&L and cash flow statement. And then my partner, Nellie Vale, she's my partner in Annex and partner in life as well. She comes to me and she goes, you should buy out your partners. And I was like, I do not have that kind of cash. And she goes, you don't need cash. She goes, you need a cash flow statement and you need a story. And not just a romantic story, but a story that reads on a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. So I went to the bank armed with that information, armed with the sort of moves that I could make, armed with how much money I would save by buying out partners and their salaries. And I was actually making more money by buying out my partners. So I told the bank that, and he said, okay, well, perhaps this might go through the SBA or what have you. I'll get back to you soon. He called me back the next day and he was like, Daniel, this is great. We're going to finance this in-house. We don't need to go through SBA. It's all good. Gravy, here's your check. And
Yeah.
so
Did everyone hear this? Go rewind the last 2 minutes and hear that again, because that's exactly what keeps people from taking the next step of making your own business. You don't need that money. You need to know how to work it. You need how to make the money work for you.
That's right.
Like, and don't be afraid.
It helped that I had, all those years of revenue. Year over year was just up and up and up. It was in a growing city. A lot of stars aligned for sure. But to Max's point, I mean, you got to know your numbers. You really have to. I know so many small business owners that it's just like, man, you need to go take a little class or something, because it's really, really important. You're running a business. You're not just all the romantic side of the restaurant business is great. It's my favorite part. It has been my favorite part. Now my favorite part is actually crunching numbers.
Yeah. You also said something to me that I thought was a key tip in terms of using a local bank, a small local bank, because they were able to, as opposed to a big corporate bank, really cut through the red tape and see what you were trying to do.
No doubt. Small everything, right? Small coffee, small florists, small everything. Keep your money local as much as you can. But small banks are going to have your back a little bit more. I know so many people that banking with the big guys, Wells, PNC, they didn't even get callbacks when it came to things like PPP. I had my banker call me. And, he put his best foot forward. He got in touch with my CPA and they're like, all right, here's how much to ask for. Here's the deal. Here's what to expect. I felt really guided through this process. And I think it's just wildly important to bank with small banks.
That's great. That's really great information. Yeah, because the local guy knows what it means. Like, like Stanberry. We know Stanberry is a great restaurant, as we mentioned earlier. But if they wanted to get a loan from somewhere, a local bank would be like, oh yeah, we've known that Stanberry is a great restaurant. They've done this over the amount of time.
Right.
The execs, in like New York aren't going to know that this local restaurant, if you just look at it, even if they're not, they may not be pulling in a ton of money, but what they are doing is creating an opportunity to the local area. So there's money there. So you're only going to know that if you understand the local business and how it's affected.
Right.
And I'll just add this right there, that speaking of local, it's also important to shop at your local wine shop, because I know that there's these great stuff online that give you algorithms to find a bottle of wine or whatever. But what I always tell people, the last bastion of brick and mortar retail is the wine shop, and specifically in this area, Triangle Wine Company, because they have 4 locations, soon to be a 5th in North Raleigh.
Awesome.
They're great guys. They're local. And not only do they have wine, they have unbelievable beer selection, vermouth, all these kind of other beverages that you can get there, some cheeses and meats as well. And you can order online, and they'll learn, and you can speak to somebody and order online if you go to trianglewineco.com, and they'll also do delivery if you need that, or curbside pickup, like everybody else does in this business model of today. But Triangle Wine Company, you can really develop a relationship with your local wine retailer, and they will know your palate, I guarantee you, better than any algorithm can. So shop local, shop Triangle Wine Co. Use the NCFB promo code, and you will receive a beautiful discount.
Yeah. And now time to shift, Matt. I said a couple surprises over here.
Oh.
I want to talk liquor with somebody that knows booze, and there have been a lot of changes. Here, hold on, I'm just trying to take this ice out. I'm going to pour it into my coffee because that's weird, and just dry it again. You're running a bar. We mentioned earlier that the bars got hit harder than any other place in this industry, and things that just changed recently, cocktails to go, right? And getting to the point The new rule that Governor Cooper passed was that they allowed bars to now sell alcohol to go, which sounds insane. It sounds funny. It's like, you mean the first question's like, so we can drink and drive now? Like, no, of course not, morons. It's just you
do
get to buy
eat
this
and drive when you take your food when you get curbside food.
yeah, you do. As we mentioned, they pulled all the delivery companies for like Uber and Grubhub and all that, and they like anonymously all admitted that they took bites of like food, like fries out of your, like you don't want to know this, but yeah. So obviously, no, you can buy a pre-packaged mixed beverage sealed, and then you bring it and you put it in your car or your skateboard or your bike, as long as it's sealed, and you take it home and you enjoy it there. You don't enjoy it on the side of the street, like in a non-sanctioned drinking area. You need to go either home to a residence or like on the patio or something of our business. Anyhow, the cool thing that I noticed though is even though there's that 10 o'clock shutdown for bars, the curbside, the delivery can go up until 2 a.m. And I don't know if people are utilizing that little factor of the business as much as they could, but I don't know if that's something that you guys have interplayed. I don't know if there's enough itch for that scratch to like actually make money. But I noticed that and said, oh, well, everybody else is closed at 10 o'clock now, but you can sell alcohol to go beyond 10. So why can't we make some killer ass stuff to like maybe just put like really, really tiny cocktails that are just single serving ones? Because the ones that I've seen have been like little larger vessels and all, but just make it really easy to take that stuff home and keep the night going. Anyhow, all that said, for the last 3 months, we'll get into what I'll do later on another podcast when it's time. But my new business partner gifted me on my birthday at the end of September a 5-liter oak barrel and said, "Make the best cocktail you can make and spare no money, spare no expense. Just do it and make what you can." I love a Vieux Carré. And so this is not exactly what the Vieux Carré is. This is just me. I went to an ABC shop and just grabbed a bunch of random bottles. It's in a Basil Hayden's bottle, but that's not what's in this bottle. I took it out at the beginning of the year because 3 months it aged kind of nicely, and I thought, all right, it's time. I took Basil Hayden's rye. I took Whistle Pig rye. I took Copper and King's brandy, Remy VSOP, Courvoisier VSOP. I took 2 really nice Italian sweet vermouths. I just blended it all together in kind of a quasi. Oh, and I put some Benedictine in there too.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, and I put it all together. I aged it. I don't think it's like the greatest thing I've ever tried, but I do think it's kind of nice. And so I'm just.
How long did it sit in there? Your 5-gallon barrel?
3 months to the day.
Oh, cool.
So I put a timer or a calendar in my phone, and I said, "Oh, it's time." And so I'm just pouring this over ice right now, and I'm giving it a quick little stir, and I'm gonna express it with a little bit of lemon because it needs that. And I wanted to see, maybe as I'm pouring this, Daniel, speak to me about what you guys are doing. And are you doing anything when it comes to cocktails to go?
Sure. Cocktails to go. We jumped on it the same day. A good friend of mine sent me a text at about 2 p.m. and he said cocktails to go are going to happen today. So I started advertising for it at 3. I happen to have little 5-ounce hot sauce bottles. Think of like Tabasco or Texas Pete with the caps. And so I took a house favorite. We batched it right away, added some water for dilution, poured it in there. So that's our little single service package. And for anyone doing cocktails to go, it's all about packaging. Invest just a little bit more. Get little 8-ounce plastic soup containers and put your ice cubes in there, put a lid on it, get some stickers made. The little 5-ounce hot sauce things are great. We also got the smaller versions of mason jars. And so things like margaritas, something with a lot of modifiers going in there with a sticker, looks really good. So we're just doing 2 at a time. We're not going till 2. We're going until, last orders come in at about 9:30 for curbside orders via, our online app. But it's actually In my opinion, it's a little bit too little too late in a way. It still just, kind of chaps my ass thinking about how long North Carolina sat on this and for what reasons, especially. Also, to my understanding, it was some federal mandate that forced North Carolina to do this, that said you must open up this avenue for your bars and restaurants.
Could it also be because many class action lawsuits have been put against the government for closing down bars without any real scientific evidence that bars have anything to do with the spread of the coronavirus?
Yeah, and kudos to anybody who's been fighting that. Zach Medford, hats off to that guy.
Mark Garagos on the West Coast is doing it, and he's like one of the biggest lawyers in the country, if not the world. When he started doing it, because he's a restaurant owner as well, it's like, oh shit, well now there's a big champion on the team of pro bar. So
yeah, I'm glad they're doing it. And when you think about it, I understand bars in a way being seen from the outside as a place where people are going to, get inebriated, lose their inhibitions, get close to one another, and potentially, it being a spreader sort of scenario. But what would happen if it was just treated like a restaurant where you had to get your temperature gauged and you had to wear your mask and you sat down and there was just seated, socially distant spacing
because you
only.
can still get inebriated at a restaurant.
Thing,
You're still getting drunk at a restaurant.
It's so sad.
Buy alcohol.
But I guess they're like, well, who's going to enforce this? And I'm like, well, trust me, people will enforce it. I mean, even during COVID, I've had ABC and ALE just knocking on the door. I'm like, you guys are just bored. You know what I mean? Like, leave us alone.
And you would think there would be some slack or some leeway they would give you in this time.
We should be able to sell weed. You know what I mean? We got to survive.
Seriously.
We ain't nothing but tax collectors, and we pay for all these people's salary. And I hate taking that road, and I normally don't take that sort of rhetoric and language all the way through. But with 2020, and we got the plug pulled on us at Annex. We were lumped together as one ABC permit with Bar Virgile, and so we were able to seat people in Annex and generate some revenue. Annex was open for 4 days.
This is the subterranean
That's right.
location you have below Bar Virgile.
That we opened 4 days before COVID shut us down. So we were able to seat down there, and we were able to do 50% occupancy in Bar Virgile and 50% down there. ABC goes, nah, never mind. We need you to have separate liquor licenses. And I'm like, why? They said, because of this weird stairwell it's kind of a serpentine building, but nothing crazy. And so she goes, and so I had to go through all the work and get the new license. And she goes, okay, here's your 2 licenses. Congratulations. But, Annex is closed now. And I was like, wow. Because there's a stairwell. We're trying to survive. We had bills to pay. When you open a bar or a restaurant, you're counting on a couple months of revenue, and you're asking people to be patient, whether it's American Express or whether it's your contractor or what have you, and you're paying interest on that patience and all that stuff. No revenue comes in, kaboom, right? Just for ABC to do that for no particular reason was just a real kick in the shins.
Cheers,
boys.
Salute.
Max came prepared today.
He did. I like it.
More presents and surprises. It should be my birthday every day.
Mm-hmm.
That's delicious.
Yeah, so it's like kind of a Vieux Carré, but I don't know. It's just a real boozy drink.
What? So you used 2 cognacs, you said?
I did.
So what's the thought behind that?
Just because when I was at the liquor store, I was like, well, I was making 10 liters at one time because my business partner also bought a second 5-liter oak barrel, and he said the trick, he's like, the whole thing is you get to do this, but you also get to do it for me,
right?
And so make one for me and then give it back to me. And so I was at the store and I did a lot of research on my whole thing. I'm like, I'm just going to do it this way. And I punted in the middle of the whole thing when I got to the store because I saw a bunch of different products, and instead of say going like 100% of the rye in at Basil Hayden's, I went, well, I could just mix it up and blend the ryes. Like, let's blend rye. Why not? So I did Whistle Pig and Basil Hayden, and then I just kept that mentality as I went through. I'm like, all right, well then let's do 2 vermouths, let's do 2 cognacs, and then the brandy Benedictine. I put that in the same category. So I considered the Copper and King's brandy as like the same as the Benedictine, if you will. They're different, but
so like if you were building this as a singular cocktail, you'd normally put like about a 1/4 ounce of Benedictine in. Is that the same ratio with the brandy too?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, dude, it's really well integrated. And is this the first time you've had it?
Yeah. Well, no, I've been nipping on it throughout the whole 3 months. Like I was testing its aging process.
Yeah, sure.
Making sure
it was aging correctly. Yeah.
Now
what was nice
you got
though
a gallon left, right?
I pulled them all into I kept the bottles. and just left them in the garage, and then took all the labels off, cleaned them, sterilized them, and just waited. And then as I was pulling it through, I thought, well, it's 5 liters. If you do the math, 5 liters divided by a 750 milliliter bottle should get you 6.66 bottles, right? And in the end, I didn't nip off of it too bad. And the Angel share, which, evaporates a little bit, I ended up having 5.5 bottles. So I basically lost a bottle, but that was through me nipping some and giving some to my neighbors during quarantine and doing this and that. So not too bad. And now I've got 5.5 delicious bottles. This one will stay here at the kitchen, and we'll nip on it whenever we want and have something. But why not?
It's very good. It's
delicious.
Well done.
Yeah. Cheers. I want to get back to the cocktails to go thing for a minute, and maybe you can shed some light on this. And one thing I do is I want to give a shout out to NCRLA, because from what I heard, they were very impactful in making this happen and pushing the governor to get that across. But from what I understand, it's 1 cocktail per person. Why? What's the point of that? Like you said, you can go buy a 5th of liquor at the ABC store. Why would it only be 1 cocktail?
God, I mean, can you answer any of this?
It's so antithetical to business.
Yeah, it's pretty dumb. I think that, when you have this sort of really old school kind of Bible Belt mentality, there's just going to be these sort of restrictions. It blew my mind, when you talk about going to the liquor store. I mean, I don't know what the limit is. I forget. But I know that you can go buy a case of vodka, and drive away with it in your car.
Yeah.
But I can't sell you 2 ounces and squeeze a lemon into it. That's the difference.
See, that's the thing is like what I made here, and it didn't have to be on this top shelf liquor and aged for 3 months. But my whole point was like, why couldn't bars do an entire bottle of something that's like boozy, complex and stirred, and, maybe leave out the citrus and leave out the fresh stuff, so that it could sit in a bottle for a while. Mm-hmm. But why couldn't you do all that? And then if that was the case, think about the branding and the marketing that you could do beyond that, like Bar Virgile's Old Fashioned, or or sidebars.
I mean, in a
Manhattan.
proper 750 milliliter bottle.
Like you make an entire big batch and you pour it into a full bottle and then label it, brand it, and it's like, this is a full-blown cocktail, but ready to go in a bottle. That's where they should have taken this mentality with, because
Agreed.
You're right. It's too little too late. It's like, yay, okay, so we could do this. And that's why I looked at like, well, they're letting us at least keep the bars open for to go until 2 a.m. But again, like who's going to do that?
Who's going to do that? Because then you have to have a delivery person, or if you're not doing curbside, you have to have somebody. You have to employ somebody and pay them to be at the establishment until 2 a.m.
And you can't be at the bar to drink it. So you're buying one drink, going home, drinking it, and then calling them to deliver another one to back to your house. That's too much shit to deal with,
So the law reads, and I found this out pretty early on. That you can sell beer and wine in the manufacturer's original package with label and what have you. So, it's COVID. And I read that and I decided to internalize that a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. Did I know I was doing something that was not technically legal? No. So I took these little Capri Sun pouches. They were clear. They're little. They were like, I don't know, 20 ounces actually. And by the time we put liquid in it, it was 16. And so we made sangria, and we made sangrias in the vein of cocktails. We were doing things like Paloma sangrias. We were doing like daiquiri. We were doing like these tropical ones with, flavors that you might think would come from Angostura bitters. Did it come from Angostura bitters? No. But maybe. So the way I internalized that was taking that package. I was the manufacturer.
Yeah.
And I kind of told myself this story so that I was ready to tell the story, and put a sticker on it and everything like that. It blew up. It went crazy in Durham. We did one that was local strawberries in the spring, and we called it Strawberry Wine. And there were people with their stories on Instagram with the song Strawberry Wine playing in the background. It was fun. It was amazing. We were tonning it. Wow. Absolutely tonning it. And it basically saved Annex. I was able to pay, I don't know, a large chunk of money to a number of people. Yeah. It was incredible. And then one of my esteemed colleagues in the area decided to alert me and say that wasn't, necessarily the right thing to do. And from what I gather, that person alerted the authorities as well. And so they came and showed up and they said, well, you can't. I was like, but I read that, I'm the manufacturer. And he goes, well, Daniel, I hear you. He goes, but listen, this is a warning. You can't do this. does in a time like this, is that moral flexibility? No, I think it's common sense. I think that we should be able to do those sort of things. And I wasn't afraid to take that calculated risk, not at all. And so now we're doing the same thing. It's back up. And again, thank goodness that it's legal now.
All I got to say is, who's the asshole that wanted to stop that process?
No comment.
Because I'll comment on that. That's bullshit, because is this really adversely affecting society? Is this making it unsafe? Because that's, in the end, that's the reason why, if we're going to believe that the bars being closed are to purposely protect us, well, is this scenario making it less safe for people?
Right.
The answer is no.
The answer is absolutely
and so
not.
If you're enforcing this law, this is not coming from safety. This is just coming from regulation.
Right. This is coming from a sore loser who wasn't getting the revenue that Daniel was, and they felt, oh, well, let me just tell on him, and then I'll get some more of that revenue. But I didn't have the creativity. Who are these
assholes?
Yeah.
Like, who does this stuff? So just, everybody pipe down. Let people try to figure out how a squirrel can get a nut, and let them collect those nuts as far as they can. Stop trying to drop dimes on people when you're just trying to get your business out there and keep going.
Yeah, and keep your thoughts to yourself. You know what I mean? Don't even share anything like that. Just stay in your lane.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I feared that, I'm not even going to mention, for fear of I don't know, outing them or whatever, but somebody like a local bar made an awesome version of eggnog, rompope, and rompope, and it's like a Mexican eggnog, and there may or may not have been alcohol in there, and I was able to may or may not purchase for Christmas Day and have an amazing time with my family and friends, and we shared all this, my neighborhood. And it's like, I purchased it, and granted, the law did pass on December 23rd, so I think everything was on the up and up when I purchased it, and it was fine. But I don't even want to brag about the person that did this, because in fear of putting their business in jeopardy, and that's such bullshit. It's no, we should be able to do these things. We should be able to support local business, and just because there was a couple of ounces of tequila or rum or whatever inside it, does that make it the devil's juice? Meanwhile, you go to another state and buy an ounce of weed,
Right.
Well, laws and morals just don't, necessarily correlate. That's just the way it is, you know.
Right. Because the laws are feeding somebody's pockets.
Damn right.
And morals are feeding the church's pocket. No, I didn't say that.
There you go.
But
the view carré, man. Let's get another one.
Yeah, let's get another. Or no, you know what?
Morality going down.
What do you see on a positive note? Coming back when Bar Virgile comes back and maybe everybody gets vaccinated and we have a safe place, quote unquote, to go out. Are you going to go back to business as usual the way it was before, or some things different? I mean, what's on tap? For
me, back to business as soon as possible, the way that it was before, because I'm a firm believer and lover of everything that has to do with restaurants and bars and nightlife. I think that, we've taken precautions. We've implemented a lot more sort of strenuous, language about hand washing and sanitation and stuff like that. And I've woken up to a number of things. And maybe one or two staff members would come in smelling like cigarette smoke, and it's like, come on, First of all, that's just any young people out there, don't do that.
Bad hospitality. Right?
It's terrible, and I really look forward to things coming back. I'm going to work my tail off, and I think, to answer your question, I think people need to be really thankful and have a really good mindset on perspective of what it was once like, and that it was okay standing shoulder to shoulder, face to face with people, imbibing, eating really quality things. Chefs working their tails off to not only be efficient and create something that's going to make money for a business, but that it's really going to elevate senses for any diner or any person that comes into that restaurant. We've taken those sort of things for granted. We forgot how good we had it. You don't really know what you've lost until it's gone. And I think this is a really good opportunity to shapeshift, the mentality, to reset, to not take this for granted. I tell my team, let's be 15 minutes early, not 15 minutes late. That's the world of difference to me and my perspective, my perception of you. And, you're in charge of managing that. So restaurants in general can have that in a way without being too ethereal. I just think that there's an opportunity to really, capitalize on what was once before and do it better and have a fresher sort of viewpoint on things.
And what, because we talked a little bit about the cocktails, the Ramos Fizz, and some of this stuff, but like one of the things that set you apart as a bar was the food, because the food was incredible. So what were some of the signature dishes and what will be back on the menu, or what's on the menu now, actually, that's really doing well
for takeout? Thanks for asking. Our burger is pretty legendary.
Okay.
A lot of people think we have the best burger in town.
Okay.
I have had that burger, and it is goddamn delicious.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So we have a kind of a Mediterranean sort of feel to our menu, whether it's Italian or French sort of backbone, but our food is really approachable, really simple, just done well. And, like Ben Barker, not afraid of flavor. My guy who's running the kitchen, hats off to Chef Jorge. That guy, he will make it very, very tasty. It'll be spicy. It'll be big in flavor. He does not back off. He's got a perfect sensibility for salt. It's really great. So we're doing a duck cassoulet right now that's also available curbside that he does a great job with.
That actually would seem to me to travel well.
It travels great. Travels really great. So
because the whole cassoulet is the actual dish.
It's a thick stew, and you've got this beautiful confit duck leg that's on it. Open that up, heat it up real quick. It's perfect. It's awesome to-go food. So we put a couple soups on the menu because soups travel well. We've got salads. The way we break down our burger for to-go, we put the patties and the cheese off to the side, and we've got the lettuce, tomato, onion. It's kind of deconstructed so that by the time you get there, it's not all mushed and messed up. And we take that extra step to do that. But as far as cocktails go, when things come back, or even right now, because we're still able, knock wood right now, able to operate at 50% capacity, we've always got a great lineup of seasonal sort of things. Our bar always focuses, like any good bar, on really fresh sort of seasonal ingredients, some cool infusions and stuff like that. We've got a mezcal and hibiscus infused agave sort of margarita, if you would, with some dragon fruit and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, fresh, seasonal, local when we can, Our menu's pretty big for a small place. I mean, we've got 8 or 9 different entrees. We've always got a little subsection of veggies and sides. And I'm kind of a deadhead from back in the day, so it's called Grateful Veg. You can choose 3 of the vegetables, and that's your entree. And there's a lot of vegetarians out there.
My wife noticed that when we ate.
Oh, did she?
She's real big into vegetables. She'll eat meat, but she's like, I could be a vegan for the rest of my life if I wasn't married to you.
Oh, wow.
But that was something she noted. She's like, whoa, this is like a really beautifully curated vegetarian menu on top of the meat menu too.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I think a lot of restaurants, you've always got these asterisks. It's vegetarian, it's vegan or whatever. I like to keep our menu kind of open. Of course, vegan, we can cook for you. Vegetarian, we can cook for you. But also there's, I don't see a lot of vegetarian things on here. Well, you're not going to see any asterisks. But if you talk to the wait person or the bartender, we're going to point to about 12 or 15 options for you.
Yeah. Peel back that onion.
Because I don't think vegetarians should have an asterisk next to them. They can eat however they want.
Right.
Yeah. And a proper vegetarian should know that when you read the ingredients that it's vegetarian.
There you go. Same thing with gluten. Is the pasta gluten-free? Yes. Well.
Sure.
Yeah, you tell me.
Get that
00 flour.
00 flour.
Then it's doable. You're right.
Yeah. There you go.
Well,
but we before you get out of here, we've got a couple of little gifts for you. You're going to go home with some cool stuff. That little black bag in front of you is loaded right here. This little guy.
Oh, in front of you.
Yeah, the one right in front of your face is loaded with Boss Coffee, which is a Japanese product. It's flash brewed. It's available on Amazon, so that is not a local thing. I mean, Japan, as we've said before, it's just a small little island off the coast of North Carolina, so it's cool, But it comes in 3 flavors: black, vanilla, and cafe au lait. Flash brew itself is a uniquely Japanese process where the coffee is brewed hot, then chilled fast for optimal flavor and texture. They flash brew their beans, unlock rich aromas, and quickly cooling them to lock all those flavors in. So go to Amazon, order Boss Coffee, and you can put in the promo code NCFB Podcast and receive 10% off of your purchase.
Yeah, and so you're going to go home with that. And then you mentioned infusions or fusions, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but great friend of the show is Proof Alcohol Ice Cream. And so they have this proprietary method by which they infuse ice cream, and really good ice cream just as a standalone, with all different types of liquors, like you have the cheesecake moonshine, bourbon caramel. The new one is the pumpkin spice.
For the holidays, we have peppermint. We still have it in there. So before we get out of here, we'll let you select whichever one you want out of our
just one
proof alcohol ice cream brand. Well, I don't know.
Maybe we'll let you take
maybe two.
Yeah. But you're going to have to turn in some other stuff. Yeah, let me hold your keys. But you can take whatever you like, and you'll also walk out. You're wearing a Tampa Bay Rays hat. It's cute. It's nice.
Yeah, we tried.
But we'll let you walk out with a beautiful NCFB podcast hat to upgrade your look. By the way, friend of the show, Terry, he I don't know what he was thinking, but he shaved his head completely, and he's like, I'm gonna need to. You guys got those beanies, right? He's like, can I please have one of those beanies? I'm like, well, you do listen to the show all the time.
He is a super
Terry.
fan.
Maybe Terry.
Do you even I don't have any more.
Oh, I have them under lock and key. It's right over here. Yeah. So, and anyone that wants an NCFB hat, you can go on our website. You can get it. We do donate the proceeds of the hats to the Restaurant Association, to the North Carolina Restaurant Relief Fund for bartenders and servers. So you can do that. You can hit it up on our website and go from there. But I think that's all we got.
Yeah, I do suppose if you wanted more beanies, if people wrote in, we could put a new order together and get people some beanies.
Yeah, it's cold right now.
Yeah,
it's beanie
perfect. But seriously, Daniel, thank you for sharing your story with us, and I wish you the best, man. And for those of you out there, go check out Bar Virgile, and when it reopens, the annex, and you will eat and drink very merrily.
Thanks very much, Marcy.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.